All set.
Okay, thanks everyone. We're gonna go ahead and get started today. I appreciate you coming, and I think we're gonna have some fun. We're looking for some really fun citizen science activities that we can do right from home. So my name is Dana Bookbinder, and I'm the citizen science coordinator at EcoSpark. And Karina, my colleague, is here today. She's our environmental education lead instructor, and she'll be helping me with the slides. So bear with us as we get this going remotely here. All right, next slide. Thanks, Karina. As I mentioned, I work with EcoSpark, and for more than 20 years now, we've been empowering people to take an active role in protecting and sustaining their local environment. We give people the tools for education, monitoring, and influencing positive change. So I hope you feel positive after joining our webinar with us today. If you're just joining us, there's a chat feature. We'll be monitoring that and hopefully getting some feedback as we go through the webinar. So go ahead and type any questions you have there, and we'll answer a few more questions right at the end as well. Next. Thanks. Okay, just one more little background slide here to let you know we do have programs throughout the Greater Toronto area. And we bring school kids out to do stream monitoring with changing currents, where they put on big waders and get in the streams and actually collect data from the biodiversity that we find there. It's really fun. Some of our other offerings are citizen science on school grounds. So a lot of the content from the webinar today is projects that we use in grades 6 through 12 on school grounds to find birds, identify plants, really get involved right in nearby nature. We also have projects that we work with parks and community groups. And our Greenbelt program is really getting going now with a fun project called Greenbelt Youth Ambassadors. So these are people who get to go out on bus tours, find out what ecosystem support services are right around our urban environments, and get involved in that way. And we're setting up a virtual bus tour at the moment, so stay tuned for more information about that. If you have questions about any of the resources I talk about today, there will be a little survey option at the end, so you can send us your email and we'll send you this slide deck, all of the links, our newsletter sign up if you're interested in that, and you don't have to write down notes the whole time if you want to plug in with us later. Next slide, please. Wonderful. So the first activity that we're going to do today, you can start doing right now. I'm going to ask you to look outside. So find your nearest window, take a peek. Anything that you see out there that is alive or a sign of life counts for this. And we're going to use the little chat feature so you can participate and help us out. I would love for you to click on the chat button, tell me what it is that you see out your window, a pigeon. I have my neighbor's brick wall and a little bit of snow flurries. One spider web that's right in the windowsill there. So there you go. My sign of life is a sign of a spider. And you just type in the chat.
Morning doves.
Morning doves, beautiful. Oh, I love that. That sound just it reminds me of waking up when I was growing up. So we're going to be doing some bird activities. We'll talk through resources, including you can record bird calls right from your house and try and figure out what species it is. If you didn't know it was a mourning dove and you heard something calling, you could identify it from its call.
We have
trees. Excellent.
Oh,
yes.
Right.
Yeah, oh, trees and grasses. A fun game that we're gonna play is which species outside of our windows are native and which ones might be introduced or even invasive. You can do this with a family member, and we'll give you some tools to figure out what might be cultivated and what was there of its own accord. So dandelion seed blew in, nobody planted that, but maybe your tulips were an intentional project with your neighbors. Great, and we'll do one more example here. Go ahead, Karina.
Yeah, we have a lot of examples coming in. Someone said this morning downstairs they had 2 goldfinches. Nice.
Amazing, beautiful birds. I think they like sunflower seeds, if I'm not mistaken, and that's a really fun piece of habitat that we can be providing is some forage for our feathered friends. So we'll talk about growing plants as well. Okay, yay, the chat works. Thanks so much for participating in that chat feature, and use that as we go to ask questions. We'll try and keep up. So this window that you're viewing, by the way, is kindly offered from our director, Paul. This is his kitchen window view. And go ahead and do the circle thing. See, Karina, thank you, awesome. So this is a rain gauge that Paul has installed from a citizen science project that we're gonna talk about. You also could have a rain gauge in your backyard and be part of an ongoing scientific study where you just say, how much rain fell, how much snow in some cases overnight, and you can check that daily. So Paul's tip is to have it in view from the window so you can check while you still have your jammies on. And we'll have an activity where you can make your own rain gauge if you don't want to purchase the scientific equipment to have a more accurate reading. That's a fun way to get involved. And then a couple more examples here. Let's see, we've got the plants, I think is the next one, Karina. In the bottom corner here, you see a little scrap of green. So you'll have to do next slide. There we go, thanks. And this is maybe something that came up of its own accord. Another area where we could be adding more green as we go. So we'll talk about some fun homemade planter options that you can do. If you're home with kids, a lot of these projects are great learning activities for all ages. All right, next please. Awesome, there's some of our homemade plants that you see in the eggshells, so we'll talk about that a bit more. All right, so all of these projects fall under the category of citizen science, and this is citizens of the world is where that word comes from. So it really is the idea of being inclusive. It's studying nearby nature together. So it's a wonderful thing that we can do in these times of isolation because we rely on participants from all over the world to just take a closer look nearby and see what it is that their nearby nature is doing. It's homegrown inquiry, so science doesn't have to be fancy here. You can ask questions about what it is that you're curious about, and probably there's a citizen science project where people are offering more resources to really get involved in that. Environmental monitoring is fun, I think. So it's also helpful. And we'll talk about ways that you can find projects that have enough resources to really get anybody involved, and then how you can take it a step further and do your own inquiry at home. And next slide, please. Well, welcome everybody. If you're just joining us, you can use the chat feature to get in touch with us. As we go through, we're talking about some activities you can do from home. So the very first thing, when I'm talking with a group of students, for example, they say, where do we get started? Well, what is your goal or question? You can find questions anywhere. It might be from your youngest family members. What is this neat bug that I found? Take a moment, get close up, snap a photo, and then you can learn about that bug. There's wonderful apps out there, and we'll have an example of that called Seek that actually uses online photos to track what species it probably is and suggests some options. So don't be scared if you don't know what it is that you're looking at yet. There's a great way to find out. How many native species are seen from our window? So that's the game I mentioned, where you're trying to distinguish, okay, this is the same old view, what can I learn more about it? How can our balcony garden invite pollinator visits? So if you're into gardening or you're thinking about maybe getting started, you can think about what habitat resources your garden might have for the rest of our environmental species. And how many different birds can our family tally in 15 minutes? So if you've got a competitive streak, you can set up a project with neighbors or friends remotely and challenge each other to figure out what you can find and see with some of these citizen science projects. All right, next please. We're gonna get started here with starting seeds. So I found some really wonderful local resources. Food Share is an organization that, along with the Stop, is providing good food for people to eat in times of need. And they also have some resources for people to get started growing things at home. So they've made these posters and invited us to share them with you. There's fast, easy, small space, high yield crops, for example. So this is like the best of the best. If you have any trouble sourcing materials, you can shoot me an email at the end and I'll give you some local resource ideas. In general, grocery stores are still offering seeds. You can also order seeds by mail. And if you need things like soils, garden centers typically have a website running that have options for delivery, depending on what's available in your local area. I love this, this poster, and the thing that I think about with planting garden crops is, will this flower actually support pollinators as well? So bush beans are here. Some bean species are pollinated by buzz pollination, which this is dorky but super fun. The bumblebee actually grabs onto the flower and shakes it a certain way at a certain frequency and gets a whole shower of pollen. So that's much more effective for the plant to transfer its pollen from one flower to another. And that's 400 times more effective actually than the honeybee. And this is our native bee species. So here in Toronto, we're home to more than 300 bee species, 300. And there's more than 50 bee species in the typical backyard. So these are incredible numbers. If you start to take a look, I think you'll find that there's a lot going on right close to home. I also will mention that our native bee species tend to be solitary and shy and hesitant stingers. And I think there's almost a motto there. Some of the solitary bee species have communal groups where they all kind of live in their own little holes, but they forage together and come out and communicate. So it sort of sounds familiar to me right now. I'll also encourage you to look at your native plant lists. We've got a link here for the Xerces Society's pollinator-friendly native plantings by region. So check out what grows well. Native plants are great because they're going to be more attuned to your local environment and a little bit easier to grow. And then, of course, they support our native species. Again, all of the links are going to be available on these slides, which at the end you can ask for the slides and we'll send them right out to you. So you've got it in your inbox if you like. Next, please. Thanks. For starting seeds, there's some fun options. Go ahead and do the next one too, if you don't mind, Karina. We've got two common supplies here, egg cartons and toilet paper rolls. These are tried and true methods if you don't have the little plastic pots, and of course it saves recycled materials are better for the environment anyway. So you can just see the technique for the toilet paper rolls. You can fold over the bottom so the soil doesn't fall out, stack them all into a flat tray and keep everything nice and moist. For the eggshells, you'll want to have a little drainage hole. So like when you blow out an Easter egg, you put a little hole in the shell and that helps the water drain. You can also plant just directly into the egg cartons and then use scissors to cut them apart. All of these nice compostable materials are great for seed starts because you don't have to transplant out of them with the messy root of whatever it is that you've planted. You just take the whole thing and put it into a larger pot on your balcony or into the garden if you have a space, and it decomposes naturally and actually amends the soil that way. So there's lots of resources online. We can give you some more specifics. You can let us know what you've got going. And I do want to mention we have some grow boxes. Let me just grab one of those to show you. I forgot here. There we are. So these grow boxes are from a nice group called My Grow Box. You can see it fits right inside of a milk crate and allows you to start your seeds and then move it outdoors when they're a little bit bigger. And we're offering 5 of these seed starting kits to educators who are watching the video, the webinar. Thank you so much for joining. If you're interested in having one of these seed starting kits with a custom blend of pollinator seeds that we recommend, we can collect your info right at the end, and then we'll choose 5 local educators from the Greater Toronto area and get you started with that. And then in the fall, EcoSpark can help you transplant from that seed starting kit right into your school ground with students and do some activities with them. So hope you'll take advantage of that. When we're doing citizen science projects, we've sort of gone over the why a little bit. It's very important for our information about local nature. There's so much that is close to home that we haven't yet discovered. Now, what about the where? Most of us, it's not really a question right now of where you're going to be looking. You might have access to some green space. If you walk around the block, for example, we're talking about sidewalk science. So if you can make it that far, do take a look. I ask you to pay attention to your local safety health guidelines and stay tuned as they're changing to make sure that you've got access to where it is that you want to go. And then ask yourself, can you repeat monitoring? So are you able to go from, like if you're going outside, let's say every day at 2 o'clock, if you're able to pay attention at that time, what is it that the wildlife around you is doing day after day? And does it change? So we're at a beautiful time of year right now, it's warming up, you're seeing signs of spring. How can we think a little bit more scientifically about that data? And if you're doing a bird survey, what species are coming in as they're migrating north to us now? Every week you're going to start seeing and hearing more and more. That's of interest to scientists as we see changes over time, both good and bad. Species and subjects of interest are a great place to start. So if you're into monarch butterflies here, that's such a captivating story with the milkweed and people helping to bring back monarch populations by planting both forage and caterpillar food for this species. Then start with that. You can find some excellent resources with citizen science projects to get you going and then bring you a little further. Maybe if you've worked with monarchs before in your classroom, then you could start exploring other native butterflies and go from there to other insect species that are more likely to find on a common classroom visit. Right now, consider habitat. So if you're kind of bored with your daily walk, try thinking like an animal, and you can think what kind of microhabitat is good for different kinds of species. Our salamander friends are going to be under things as the summer warms up. You'll see when you flip over a log or flip over a rock, just like Calvin and Hobbes, you're going to have some more species there than you had before. So please go ahead and take a look in these micro climates and then take care of them. So if you flip over a log, just make sure you put it back gently and keep that nice environment under there for the critters. You can look indoors. When we were doing our window chat, I noted a spider web. There's some wonderful work coming out of NC State with the Rob Dunn Lab that's all about the wildlife of our homes. Everything from the yeast that makes your bread rise to little critters that are hanging out in the corners of our homes. A lot of these species are unknown to science at this point, including large insects that people have never noticed, including entomologists. So it's really cutting edge science right under our noses, and I hope you'll get involved by looking close by. One way that you can think a little bit more like a scientist is to set up something called a transect. So this is my mom's, she calls it her March bank, and this is in Delaware, so it sort of corresponds to April in Ontario here. And she has a habit of kind of going out and walking the yard regularly. So you can set up an area that you're going to be checking more than once. and find out what it is that's coming up since the last time that you've been there. It doesn't have to be fancy. If you get involved in citizen science projects that have their own protocols, then having some practice with this type of activity will help you understand what it is that they're trying to replicate. So for example, having the same size transect in more than one garden and then comparing them. That's a way that scientists try and standardize things. But you can set up any distance that you like. Some people use a hula hoop and have their kids look inside the hula hoop every day. Is there something new that came up, or there are insects that wander in and out? These are wonderful ways to get started with that. And the next thing that you'll do is collect and submit data. So that sounds very fancy, but it just means kind of snap some photos and share them with people, honestly. It's the best way to get started. If you're lucky enough to have some pollinator visits, if you planted any flowers or you can find some, then the citizen science tools that we have will help you explore a little bit about what those visitors are. And it can be as simple as, 15 minutes a day, you're going to take a look and then record what it is that you see. We'll do the next page, please. I think we're going to take a break here. Oh, sorry. One more moment. We'll take a break and answer some of these great questions that are coming in. So let me just wrap up with that one. The Bumblebee Watch app is available at bumblebeewatch.org. And if you snap a photo of a bumblebee, which are those ones with the really furry bums that you see flying around, if you snap a photo of a bumblebee and submit it to this citizen science project, then experts will actually review and help you decide what species it was. Other projects might work with just the general population is able to comment and suggest. And I think Bumblebee Watch has moved that way as well, come to think of it. So next slide, please. Our dandelion species are the dandelions that I have found right on my sidewalk are one of my favorite citizen science projects. I took a stroller walk the other day and found 10 different dandelions coming up within 10 minutes. This is a species that we're actually tracking to understand a little bit more about climate trends. So our familiar yellow flower, when did it bloom? That date is something that we can follow place to place and year after year and see how is it changing with our overall climate shift. So if you're not familiar with the dandelion before it has that big fuzzy yellow flower, you can see here that it's got basal leaves that come out all before the stem. And I think they look a lot like arrows. So you can sort of see them shooting in all directions out from that base. And if you're not familiar with plant ID, a really good way to get started is find just one dandelion or even a photo of a dandelion. Time yourself and stare at it for 2 minutes. No joke, just keep looking at it. And then look around your yard, and I promise they'll just pop out to you. You'll have internalized what it looks like enough that you can start to see them in your environment. So in the next slide, you can see where you would submit information about Plant Watch and actually become a citizen scientist. We have an Ontario Plant Watch page. One of the organizations that we've partnered with for our School Watch program provides these amazing resources where they've selected 30 common species in Ontario, not just dandelions, but you can do lilacs, red maples. Check what time they're blooming. So what's the plant birthday? That's called phenology and science speak, but you're looking at these events that happen year after year and then what date it happened. So they have printable data sheets, some student extension activities, and you can also just enter the data directly to say, well, this dandelion blooms, now I'm a citizen scientist. All right, I think this is where we would like to pause and start answering some questions. So Karina, do you have any that you could field there for me? It's a little hard for me to read through the chat.
Yeah, we had one question come through, which I tried to answer a little bit, but I think you can give a better background on Dana. Pam Miller asked, is data useful if it is randomly collected? for example, when you see it, but not necessarily during regular observations?
That's a great question, Pam. Thanks so much. And thanks for joining. Nice to hear from you. Yes, absolutely. We distinguish between two types of data. One is called incidental. So that's sort of the random one that you've talked about. Like you're walking down the street, I saw a squirrel. I have a 3-year-old, so he's always, I saw a squirrel, Mom. That's an incidental sighting, and that's hugely important, especially as times are changing now. We have a lot quieter streets because of reduced traffic noises. So people have been seeing species coming out onto the streets that they don't usually see, maybe some louder bird calls, more active wildlife. It's a totally fascinating area, and we're going to be doing a little mini science project on that next week with this iNaturalist project page we'll talk about in a minute. But to answer your question, that's hugely helpful. And I think it's really helpful for scientists to start thinking with questions in mind. So that's where you get into the repeat monitoring. If you did see something unusual, go back to the same place, see if it's there a different time of day. Is it a nocturnal species? Is it one that's crepuscular? That's my favorite, where it's dawn and dusk, and you'll only see it a certain time of day. And you only know that if you kind of keep going back. And scientists, in fact, are more interested in seeing those changes over time. But by having a whole world of citizen scientists who are helping to contribute, then we do end up getting more and more data points across space and time. So let's do one more question now, and then we'll follow up with anybody who has more questions in the chat right at the end.
That seems to be it for now.
Oh, great. Okay. Good. If you have more questions, go ahead and type them in. Our EcoSpark iNaturalist project page, I'm super excited about. This is a project called iNaturalist, if you're not familiar, that's going strong. It's a global project, so people are contributing data from all over the world. It's gathering anything that's alive, really. So those snippets of moss or lichen that are on my neighbor's brick wall would totally count. You can do plants, animals, all sorts of taxa. And it's just identifying kind of what you find and where you find it. So a simple way to get involved, if you haven't yet, is to look up the Seek app, and that's fueled by iNaturalist. All it is using the images that people have already submitted to make educated guesses about what it is that you've seen. So you kind of hold up your device and you point it right at whatever species of interest you have. And even before you take a photo, it can start guessing at what species name it is. And then you can choose, if you'd like to submit directly from the Seek app, or you can submit photos that you've gotten on your own back into the iNaturalist projects. So we're asking people to please help contribute to our EcoSpark iNaturalist project page. You'll find it with the link that we're sharing. And we're going to be doing some challenges and weekly adventures, I guess you could think about, through this project page to learn more about our environment. This is going to be an Ontario-wide project, but you can contribute anything from where you live to iNaturalist. And for example, next week is when we're going to start out doing that sounds and signs of spring with our changing environment here with reduced human use on the streets, what it is that's coming out. And are the spring peepers louder this year because the traffic has gone down? Questions like that. So we need your help. Please stay tuned. Okay, great. We've been talking a lot about species, and I love biodiversity, so that's just kind of where I followed my curiosity with citizen science. But we also have different kinds of ways that you can learn about the environment. Rain gauges are a really fun tool that you can kind of get fancy with or keep very simple. So hopefully it meets your needs if you're homeschooling at the moment, or if you're a teacher and you have different grade levels. You can use this link to make your own rain gauge. All you need is a straight-sided container and a ruler, and you can use a little Sharpie and mark off on your straight-sided container, centimeters, inches, whatever you think in. Set your container out where there's no obstruction, no trees overhanging it, not too close to your house, and then see how much rain fell every day. And it'll just be a 1-for-1 if you have a straight-sided container. That's it. That's what rain gauge science is about. For a fancier scientific quality rain gauge, there's sort of a funnel housing, so it gets to be more accurate. The image here is of the inner tube that sits inside of that housing that you would mount on a post. And we're going to watch a little video, so just stay tuned, and if this works, then you can see some of the reasons that people are collecting weather data from their schools and their backyards.
Cocoras. Calling all educators. Did you get any rain or snow yesterday? Have you stopped to think that it probably doesn't rain the same amount from one place to another? How wet did you get? Well, have we got a program for you? You're probably wondering what Cocoras is. Cocoras, the Community Collaborative Rain, Hail, and Snow Network, is made up of thousands of people just like you, mapping and measuring rain and snow as it falls from the sky. Once they collect their measurement, it's only a matter of entering the amounts into our website that shows a picture of how much rain fell across the nation. Why is that good? Take a look at these two cookies. Which would you rather have? The one with a few chocolate chips or the one with a whole lot? The chippy one, right? Well, the same goes with measuring precipitation. Each chip is a measurement, and the more chips on the map, the more meaningful it is to scientists, and it can tell us more about our world. And I was just thinking, you know who could help us add more chocolate chips, measurements to our map? Schools. Why, you may ask? The cool thing about Cocoras is that it is a great way for kids of all ages, K through 12 and beyond, to learn about where our water comes from and how the atmosphere works. Students will learn a ton by using and reading a real scientific instrument. Recording data and entering it online is great for students who are learning computer skills. For older students, there are opportunities to do more advanced measurements and also conduct their own data analysis. Participating in Cocoras activities meets several of the state and national standards for science, as well as math, geography, and more. And who uses the data? More like who doesn't use the data. Farmers need to know how much it rained in order not to overwater their crops. City water managers use Cocoras data to both improve water supply forecasts and to monitor and anticipate water demand. Ski areas, whitewater rafting companies, reservoirs for boating, and even professional sports teams use the information too. The National Weather Service uses precipitation data for something called ground validation. This is where they compare the predictions and estimations to what actually happened. Using data from your school, weather forecasters can compare their radar and satellite images and hopefully in the future improve their predictions. And you know we would all love that. No school 2 weeks from Tuesday. So come and join, and soon you'll be like us, cuckoo for Cocoras.
All right, so that video shows you just how in-depth you can get with one simple measurement, like how much did it rain or snow outside. And we have a lot of interest in doing this kind of project with schools, because you can assign students to go out and collect that data every day and then get involved in tracking the data over time. So thinking back to the image that our director Paul had out of his window with his rain gauge, he says that when he notices that there's been a lot of rain overnight, then that's the day that he chooses to walk to his local stream and see how it's affecting the banks. Is there a big rush of water coming down and contributing to erosion there? You can also calculate water runoff from your home or your apartment by using a rain gauge. We have an activity to do that, which I'm happy to share with anyone, but you basically can use something like Google Maps and draw a polygon around the paved surfaces of your area, and then calculate the area and multiply that by how much rain fell in your rain gauge. And that's all of the water that you're dumping off of your property into the waterways and contributing to environmental issues. So then you can look at it again after you put in a green roof or a rain barrel or some of these other runoff remediation mediation issues that you can do. Thanks so much, Karina. I see that there is a question coming through, so I'll just hop back and answer that in case someone is curious about people raking their lawns. I've heard that doing this prematurely is bad for our pollinator species. So that was a question about the gardens that are supporting our native pollinators. Absolutely, a good practice that you can do is to bundle all of the sticks and twigs together that you're trying to clean up for aesthetic reasons, and just tie them into a bundle and place them in the corner of the property. And then if anything is overwintering there, like a small solitary bee that's inside one of the raspberry canes, for example, then they can still emerge and complete their life cycle. And then you've got a neat yard and the pollinators have a place to live. Okay, jumping back in. Thanks, everyone. So to wrap up with our Kokoraz project, I invite any educator who signs up for School Watch, if they're interested in getting a rain gauge, we have them at discount because we can offer them at cost for $30. If you're curious at home and you would like to get involved with that, the link is here and you can order one on your own. And if you have trouble getting started with rain gauges, again, I just encourage you to make your own and look out the window and see what fell. With the Kokoraz project, the only commitment is that you would go ahead and check your rain gauge every day and enter in that data, because as you saw, they use that. Scientists and anyone can access that data and figure out a little bit more about our overall weather trends. Right, next slide, please. Thanks so much. This is a fun area that I've heard a lot of folks are interested in, doing window bird surveys. So we've typically used resources from a few organizations. eBird has a lot of free resources online, and I'd encourage you right now to start with their All About Birds section, because they have resources specifically for birding from home. Bird cams, so you can have a break from your own view and check out and see what snowy owls are doing in their nests, and they've got those live bird cams going all the time. You can also participate in citizen science projects with them, more elaborate ones like Feeder Watch, where you are actually monitoring your own bird feeder and sending in weekly 15-minute data checks, which species came. That is hugely helpful as we're learning more about our bird species. We're learning that they are really tied into other environmental issues. So it really is kind of a canary in a coal mine, the songbird species that are being influenced by different environmental changes have a lot to say about the overall environmental picture for an area. And there's beautiful, beautiful resources. You can find maps. So if you're wondering what it is that you might see, you can check the wave of migration coming up from citizen science observations from the south to the north, and see which species might be floating into your area pretty soon, as anticipated with these citizen science projects. Merlin Bird ID app is a free resource that you can actually play a bird call if you only heard the call while you're out walking, and identify a bird that way. You can answer a few questions like what size was the bird generally, what color was it, and it will help you narrow down your choices for your location, which is really helpful for people new to birding or people who want to get better at it. And then one project we've used with schools is the Birds Canada picture checklists. So if you go to that link, you can type in your address or an address of interest, and it will spit out a data card like this one that you see that's got the 30 most common species you're likely to find. This was really helpful with little kids because they can point to what it was that they saw, and you get some kind of funny errors with kindergartners, but it does work. You can have kids start to think about what it is that they're looking at and do some follow-up activities. So what was the bird doing? Is it foraging? Were they flying overhead? Learn more about bird behavior. So check out those, look outside, see what you've got flying by. And I think we have a question about birds. Ontario birds have many live cams to watch birds. Would you recommend students at home to use these to collect data for citizen science? Awesome. Yeah, I think with family, with an adult's help, you could get involved in some of the naturalist communities and talk about what it is that we're seeing, not only with the live cams, but with your own citizen science data. So for iNaturalist as well, if you're 13 or older, you can have an account and start participating in the conversations about what it is that you've seen and how that relates to what other people have seen. And let's see the next slide, please. That relates to what we're thinking about with EcoSpark too, is how do you analyze and share results? So it's one thing to be curious and great to feed your own imagination, but then we are, believe it or not, relying on people to be submitting information from where they live to understand a little bit more about the environment. Changing Currents, our EcoSpark program, has put together a water quality results map from the hard work of students who have gone out in our programs and collected stream monitoring data through the years. So you can explore this map and other resources online at ecospark.ca and find out what your local stream water quality is based on citizen science data. And there's similar resources with just about any of these topics that I've mentioned, where you can take a look at what people have seen nearby. Thanks. I'd like to point out one more resource that we have. All of these projects, I know I've covered a lot of information. There's even more. All of the projects I've mentioned and additional ones are in our School Watch Guide, which is kind of like an online PDF color resource that you can use. This was written with the consultation of teachers and geared towards teachers, but I think it's really a helpful activity suggestion for people who have kids at home, or if you're just curious to learn more yourself. It highlights the projects that have educational resources, lesson plans, follow-up activities that you can do right at home. So we'll be sending that link out as well. If you're able to give your email at the end, then we can get that to you, or you can find it on our website. Next, please. So the famous survey that I've been mentioning, it's really not very long. It's not a big deal, but it would be so helpful for us if you could take a moment. We're going to go ahead and put this survey link into the chat. And if you can copy and paste it into your browser right now and just make sure it opens, that would be very helpful. And then whether or not you have time to fill it out now, I hope you do. That's great. You can get to it later as well. So if you provide a little bit of feedback on this webinar, we're going to hope to turn this into a series and provide some more resources. We would love to hear from you what is helpful, what kinds of things you might like to hear about. And again, if you provide your contact info, educators, we're doing this contest to win one of our seed starting kits through my Grow Box and help you transplant from the box with your class this fall. And then I think in addition, we've got just one more series of questions that we can answer at the end. So I'll go ahead and say thank you first, and then we'll get to some additional questions. But most of the materials from here came from our School Watch program. Teachers, educators, and citizen science project coordinators, thank you so much for consultation. My Grow Box, the Stop, and Food Share are wonderful local organizations that have helped out with this presentation. And we are indebted to Chalkers Foundation, McLean Foundation, and TD Friends of the Environment Foundation for their wonderful support. We also are supported by donations, and I'd encourage you, if you want to learn more or donate, then we're trying to make all of our materials available to schools and communities regardless of their ability to pay. So thank you for considering. And we'll do one more slide, please. I'd also like to say thank you to all of our image credits. I'm not as fancy a photographer as some of the ones that we've seen. So thank you, citizen scientists. And here's contact information. So if you want to get in touch directly, email or this one will forward to me. And I hope to follow up with you that way. We're going to take just a moment and answer some of your questions here, and then we can chat a bit more about citizen science projects. Okay, so it looks like I've gone through, we talked about raking lawns. Does anybody have any questions about using the iNaturalist project page? Has anybody done that before? Okay, I'm gonna just give you a few more ideas for what we can do with that then. And feel free, and if you want to take a moment for your mental health, go follow up with whatever it was that you saw out of your window. Take a little walk, take a break from the screen. Hope you have a wonderful afternoon. I'm going to go ahead and let you know about some additional questions that we're thinking of for our citizen science projects, and hope you can get involved with that. So the sneak preview. Sorry, go ahead, Karina.
We do just have a question that just came in. Do you want to address that?
Sure, please. Yeah.
Another question from Pam. She says, our group is interested in collecting road salt impacts on local watersheds. Have you collected data on this?
Awesome. Collecting road salt impacts on local watersheds. I have not done work particularly with road salt, although I know that in gardening communities, there's a lot of discussion in that, as well as the road salt impacts for amphibians. So a lot of resources you could check out Ontario Nature for their amphibian data going back many years. And iNaturalist now houses a lot of that data to see what it is that our most sensitive species are able to tolerate. With our own Changing Currents program, we've always collected information about salt levels in the waterways as we collect information. So actually, Karina, would you mind fielding that one about the benthics?
For sure. In the past 2 years, we've been able to get these pretty cool high-tech probes. And so for all the sites that we've monitored within the past 2 years for Changing Currents, which includes a variety of watersheds in the GTA, we've been actually able to collect the salt levels in either parts per million or in parts per thousand. And if you access that Changing Currents water quality results link that Dana has in this slide, which she can share with you, if you click on some of those monitoring sites that we have in that Changing Currents map, you're able to pull up the information about that particular monitoring site, and it will lead you to an Excel sheet with the data that we've collected for that particular site. And some sites we have the chemical data displayed on the Excel sheet there. So you would have access to see what our salt levels were for that particular site in a watershed if you're interested in looking at the data that we've already collected.
Thanks so much. If that was a little bit quiet for you to hear too, you can use the link to look at our water quality results map and then find out a little bit more about the salt content.
Pam was just asking how we collect the salt information. So we use an Oakton pH probe, and it has a little sensor. We'll just get a cup of water from the creek and dip it in and get the reading that way.
Yeah, and pH is a great kitchen activity that you can do as well, just to start learning about some of the science. If you don't have access to your local waterways right now, you can get the hang of it indoors. I think people boil cabbage and look at the different levels that come out there. All right, everyone. Well, I really appreciate you coming today and participating. We have a collection for our iNaturalist project page that we're hoping to start, as I mentioned before, is particularly what it is that you're hearing and seeing around Earth Day next week. That's right close to home, because we're going to be using that data to track what has been coming out when we go inside. So please help us out with that. One question that we had is whether spring peepers can be heard in more urban areas. So that's the little tiny tree frog that's got an X on the back. You probably haven't seen one. You probably heard them, the big peep, 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 peep that you hear in the springtime sometimes near wetland areas. If you have a chance to hear that, please go ahead and record just a little bit of the calls, and we can submit that for citizen science information at our iNaturalist EcoSpark project page. All right, do we have any more questions?
It doesn't seem so.
Okay, it doesn't look like we have anything else there. Karina and I will stay on, so if you do have chat questions, feel free to join. We're going to be wrapping up today, so if you don't have a question, then I encourage you please to go ahead and fill in your survey. We're a little bit early, so you have time to fill in your survey and let us know what you thought. That's super helpful. Again, we'll share the link in the chat. And thank you so much for joining. Have a great afternoon. Yeah, thanks everyone.